Hey guys, from the exam as well as the real world working point of view, gcloud SDK is one of the most important things. Well, any command line tool is. If you haven't taken my Linux course, I would highly recommend you do it. Otherwise, let's continue installing on Mac. So let's go to the mothership for the latest instructions, because these things keep changing. I got certified 4 months ago, and now when I'm preparing this course, I'm seeing so many changes. So we will go to the official steps, Mac OS. I'm going to start on Mac, but I have decided to conduct the rest of this course on Linux because I have been looking at the analytics, and most of you guys are using Windows. So no point in me doing stuff on Windows. All right, so I downloaded the tar.gz. It will be the same thing for Windows as well as, well, I will we will see. We'll look at the Windows install also. Like in this case, I'm just pulling that folder onto my home directory, and then in the home directory, it will, like, the only step that needs to be executed is install.sh in this folder that we just unzipped. Sorry about that. So by default, the Google Cloud SDK would come with 4 things. One is the gcloud itself. Second is gsutil, which is the cloud storage command line tool. Then BigQuery command line tool and Cloud SDK core libraries. Okay, anything else you want, you have to manually install it. And these are called components, and we will look at them in the components lecture. But for now, okay, I did not say yes to the shortcut completion part. So let's execute it again. Okay, so yes. Okay, so it's going to update the dollar path. So the gcloud SDK automatically comes into your path, so you don't have to search for it. This is a Linux thing. If you are having trouble with this part, I will suggest go do my Linux free course. And then it's going to put 2 commands in the .zshrc, because I'm using Z shell. In your case, it might be the bash shell. And it will just add these 2 entries for auto completion, and it comes in really handy, and you'd see me using them all the time. This was a Mac install. In the next lesson, we will install gcloud SDK on the Linux VM that we created, and that's what I recommend you guys use. So when I tried to install gcloud SDK on a VM, no matter which way I created the VM in Google Cloud, it already came pre-installed with gcloud SDK, and so we'll just go with that option. This is the first option, which is go into your project and click this Activate Cloud Shell button. And what that's going to do is Google Cloud is going to allocate a virtual machine for you with gcloud SDK already installed on it. Okay, and the other cool thing about this is, so here the Linux virtual machine that I ask you guys to work on is already ready for you, and it persists between sessions. And what I mean by that, if you create a file here, okay, I actually did this twice, but I didn't like the last video, so I'm gonna, okay, new directory, and then cd new directory touch checking .txt. All right, so basically whatever you did for, like, whatever commands you executed, ls, gcloud ls, and whatever. So right now, let's say you have saved that stuff in a file somewhere, right? And you want that stuff not to go away, but that's the problem this virtual VM solves. And next time you come and launch this virtual machine, it's there and ready for you to go. Basically all the stuff that you had. By the way, sorry guys, my wife and my kids are out, so my dogs are playing, and hopefully that doesn't make too much noise. But so this is one way of doing it if you're not comfortable with Linux. In the next lecture, I will spin up a EC2 instance, and that's what we will use to administer AWS. I mean, like not AWS, the to execute all the gcloud command. Plus, I will show you guys how to install the gcloud SDK on a Linux virtual machine, and that should be the thing you should be doing for everything. All right, so first of all, to not make that next video really big, I'm gonna go to compute, VM instances, and of course you'll be doing this once you get a little bit comfortable with Linux. Do complete my Linux free course, and that would give you a lot of practice activities that will get you really comfortable with Linux. So I am going to call this admin VM. The only thing I'm going to change is make this machine small. So this is going to cost not a whole lot of money, but it's about $14 monthly estimate. We don't really want it, so I'm just going to come here, and G1 small is good. Not going to worry about anything else and just say create. So by the time we start with the next session, this should be ready. Thanks guys. Alright guys, so in this video we're going to talk about the components of the gcloud SDK, and it comes pre-installed. Like when you do the install for the very first time, it installs 4 things: the gcloud command, BigQuery command line tool, libraries of course, and the cloud storage command line tool. And now what we're going to do is we're going to install one of these components or 2 of these components and remove them. Okay, right now please don't worry about what these components are doing, because the gcloud SDK section is quite big. So the only thing we're focused on here is there are 3 components installed. We're going to install 2 more and then get rid of 1 and just see the output. That's all. So don't get stressed out over it, and I will fast forward when I can, because these commands, Google Cloud tries to keep their footprint very small, and because of that they give you limited number of options when you begin. But the flip side of that is you have to install all those things, and they take a lot of time, and that can be quite frustrating. But then again, you can automate these things by using shell script, so it kind of balances things out. By the way, also don't worry about that older versions of Google Cloud Platform tools, but this is kind of what I was telling you guys, like go to their website to find the latest instructions, because they keep changing things so many times. Like the current SDK version is 274.0.1. Anyway, so gsutil is done. Now we're doing pub sub emulator, and that's done. So let's see what our component list looks like. And there we go. So there are 5 things installed now. There were only 3 before. So now we're going to uninstall just the pub sub emulator. Don't worry about what these things do at this moment. We're just learning the commands. So I started working on another window, but I'm going to blur that out so you guys can just see what's going on here, and then I'm going to fast forward through this, and basically at the end it's just going to show uninstall done. All right, so this is not a big deal. Next section is a little bit important. All right, guys, see you in the next section then. Thanks. All right, guys, so interesting section. This is something only Google Cloud does. They release 3 types of commands. So first is alpha, second is beta, and then the third is the commands without prefix, which is basically the production version. If you can see the gcloud block down there, so the gcloud alpha commands, the way you can look at them, they are just out of development and they're basically putting it out there for people to test out. Once it passes that phase, it goes to beta testing, and those features are most likely going to be production. And once the testing is done, then they become actual production commands. So gcloud billing accounts list, if I try it just with the regular, see, I'm trying to autocomplete, but it doesn't show anything. But it is available under alpha and beta. So gcloud alpha billing accounts list works, gcloud beta billing accounts list works, but gcloud billing accounts list does not work. And the reason that this becomes important, the system stability can get affected by mismatching versions. But here, these guys keep releasing version after version. Now the billing account list, I use that command a lot of times, but it is not production ready, so I have to use it. But not the best thing to do in a production scenario, but that's what we're stuck with. Anyway, so these commands are not by default installed, so we have to install them just like any other component. Anyways, I'm not sure if I should be showing you those billing lists, but this is the 9th time I'm making this video, so I am not really concerned about it. So there are 2 ways you can get these commands. One is the regular component install. The other is to try and execute that command. Like basically, I'm just going to do gcloud beta billing accounts list. It's not installed, so it's going to ask me, do you want to get it installed? And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Same thing with alpha. And that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, basically, they're going to keep releasing, so you kind of have to make a call. Do you want to upgrade or not? At this point, you don't have to worry about it, but just something to keep at the back of your mind somewhere. All right, so that's it for this lesson, guys. See you in the next one. So guys, this is the last section of gcloud SDK, and I'm not sure if you remember the services part that we talked about when we created our account. So I'm just going to replay that part of that lecture so you can remember what this is related to. Alright guys, looks like our project has been created. And then once again, whichever services we want to use in this project, we're going to have to initialize them. So IAM you don't have to, but compute engine, which is what we're going to use, VM instances. And once again, compute engine is getting ready, so this will take another 10 minutes. So once a particular API gets enabled, well, first let's talk about the gcloud services command. So if you execute it without any parameters, it's just going to error out. We are not concerned about the operations and VPC peerings because it just gets a little bit complicated right now. But the 3 commands that you would need to remember is disable, enable, and list. So list, and by default, list is going to give you the list of services that are enabled. All right, and if you want to see what all can be enabled, that you'll be able to see with available if you spell it right. Okay, it's quite big list, and 80% of the services are not relevant. I'm just going to look at the SQL related services. It'll be just a small list. Okay, these are all the available services. Now let's see what is enabled. Okay, SQL component is enabled, but SQL admin API is not enabled. SQL admin, okay. So this is the API. And okay, so it's telling us we will need to enable this. So we can do it here and keep it spinning, but you would do it here because you can automate this by putting in a shell script. So let's do this, enable. Okay, this will take a little bit, so I'm going to pause and come back. That actually completed really fast. All right. Okay, so that is enabled, and now we can manage it the same way. You can also disable it. So we will use this command in the future in more lectures, but I'm just keeping it relevant from the exam point of view. And so this should be it, guys, for the exam on the services. So once again, it should show enable. All right. I'll see you in the next lecture. Yes, another section for gcloud SDK. I'm sorry guys, but this is very important from exam as well as practical point of view. Guys, in IT, using command line, almost every single time you're going to keep using a set of variables over and over, and so you define them as environment variables, and depending on the tool that you're using, there are different ways to define them in one place. Bash shell, there are shell specific files, .bash profile, .gsrc. So Google Cloud gives you configs to do the same thing. The four main things that are visible to us are account, project, default zone, and default region. Now we are looking at the default configuration, and I'm going to create a few more configurations which we'll be using for other exercises too. So I'm going to set up 3 accounts because I want to show you guys how organizations work. So this is one account that I have that's I'm going to create, which is trash can pups. We actually did find 5 of the puppies in a trash can. Then Brooks shoes, I just made up something, and like 2 of my neighbors, I'm including their names. And the Azad Inc. would be like basically my family. Alright, so ignore the default for now, but those 3 profiles, just look at the names, the accounts being used, and the default region. One I have created in US East, other in US Central, and third in US West 1. Now the is active column is what tells us which is the active configuration. All right, the projects, the weird names are basically the default projects that got created when I created those accounts. And so the way these profiles get created is by gcloud init command. So guys, so very first time you execute gcloud init, those first line before the pick configurations to use is not going to be there, and the only option you get is that create a new configuration. But that's very straightforward, and once you watch this video you should be able to do that on your own. But in the exams you're going to get a question like this with a configuration like this, and based on that it will be a scenario based question. What would you do if this? So let's walk through this whole config. So the first paragraph is what the current configuration is. That's the active configuration. And that just compute US Central 1, US Central 1A. The account is Azad's at azad's.us and project is Johnny's admin project. Okay, now the first option, do you want to reinitialize this configuration? And reinitialize is just a fancy way of saying rewrite the existing configuration. Then second is create a new configuration, and the three options after that, it's basically giving an option to overwrite those configurations. All right, and in the next video we'll start looking at each of these, because this video has kind of gotten long. So see you in the next lecture, guys. Thanks. All right, guys, let's create our first, your first brand new configuration. So all we're doing is we're creating a set of 4 values: region, zone, account, and project. All right, so we're going to select create new configuration. After that, it's going to ask you a name, and those are the criterias. Once you select that name, it actually does a network connectivity test, and that you can disable next time by using that skip diagnostic flag. But once that is done, then it gives you again 4 options, because the first 3 are already logged in on this computer, and we're going to use the 4th one because we want to create a new config. And after that, so once you hit number 4, it actually is going to open a web browser, and here is going to ask you to log into your Google account. And once you give your login credentials, press enter. It'll bring you back to the command line. Sorry guys, it's kind of a pain to keep that 1080p window in focus, but if I choose higher resolution, a lot of you use the cell phone to watch these videos, plus some provider like Udemy doesn't even provide high resolution. Anyway, so these are all the projects that I have created in that account, and I'm selecting Johnny's admin project. After that is going to give me an option to configure default region and zone. Now I would just select the zone. All right, I can pick Europe West 4A, and Europe West 4A will be the zone and Europe West will be the region. You know what, let's go to Australia. So now Australia Southeast 1B is the zone, and Southeast 1 would be the region, and we can verify that using the gcloud configurations list command. Okay, now the thing to note here, that test delete project, that configuration that I just created, now that is the active one. Okay, so something to remember, you cannot delete an active configuration. So we are going to have to fall back to any other configuration, and you do that using the gcloud configurations activate and the configuration name command. All right, and now we're going to drop that test delete project because we're going to recreate it a couple of more times using another method. All right guys, see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, so there are 2 more ways that you can set up configurations, and these become more important than the previous method that we saw, where the command line directly opens the browser for you. And this situation is more common because whenever you're working with a machine that's in the cloud, typically you don't have access to a GUI, and basically that means you don't have access to the browser. So in that case, what you need to do is basically use both the command line on the target machine and the browser on your local machine. So let me show you what I mean by that. Otherwise, it's going to become it will feel confusing. All right, so the same configuration, delete me. I'm going to get rid of it. So remove. Okay, delete. Okay. Okay, now another thing that we need to look at is basically when you log in to a particular machine from the gcloud config, it saves that login in another place, and you can access that by querying gcloud auth list. So here we have this guy logged in, and we also need to remove that. I think that here this is remove, not remove, revoke. Yeah, they just keep changing these terms on you all the time. Okay, and that thing is gone. All right, so once again we're gonna do gcloud init, and this time we're gonna specify an option console only. Okay, so we want to create another configuration. Again, delete me. Actually, I could have skipped the diagnostic. Okay, so we don't have Johnny rebates here. We're going to create it. But see here, this time it did not open the browser for us. So we're going to copy this link, bring it onto your machine. Okay. I logged in. And then it provides me this key that I would need to paste here. And now this is how that profile gets set. I mean config gets set. So add once again, and the rest of it is usual. Take your central number 8. I just remember by heart now. Okay, let's make sure gcloud configurations list. Okay, and we have it available again. So I'm going to once again delete it and show you guys one more method in the next lecture. Thanks, guys. Alright guys, so there are two more ways that you can set up configurations, and these become more important than the previous method that we saw, where the command line directly opens the browser for you. And this situation is more common because whenever you're working with a machine that's in the cloud, typically you don't have access to a GUI, and basically that means you don't have access to the browser. So in that case, what you need to do is basically use both the command line on the target machine and the browser on your local machine. So let me show you what I mean by that. Otherwise, it's going to become it will feel confusing. All right, so the same configuration, delete me. I'm going to get rid of it. So remove, erase, delete. Okay. Okay, now another thing that we need to look at is basically when you log in to a particular machine from the gcloud config, it saves that login in another place, and you can access that by querying gcloud auth list. So here we have this guy logged in, and we also need to remove that. I think that here this is remove, not remove, the revoke. Yeah, they just keep changing these terms on you all the time. Okay, and that thing is gone. All right, so once again we're gonna do gcloud init, and this time we're gonna specify an option, console only. Okay, so we want to create another configuration. Again, delete me. Actually, I could have skipped the diagnostic. Okay, so we don't have Johnny rebates here. We're going to create it. But see here, this time it did not open the browser for us. So we're going to copy this link, bring it onto your machine. Okay. I logged in. And then it provides me this key that I would need to paste here. And now this is how that profile gets set. I mean config gets set. So add once again, and the rest of it is usual. Take your central number 8. I just remember by heart now. Okay, let's make sure gcloud config configurations list. Okay, and we have it available again. So I'm going to once again delete it and show you guys one more method in the next lecture. Thanks, guys. Alright, so the last method to create this configuration, I actually mentioned in another lecture that you cannot delete an active configuration, but I did not illustrate it, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, I happen to have that command saved. So here, deleting named configuration failed because configuration is set as active. So when you want to delete a configuration, you have to activate another one first, and then you can delete whichever configuration you're trying to delete. Okay, I'm going to quickly delete the auth as well. Alright, so that is clean. Clear the screen. Okay, so now here you can do gcloud config configurations, and I just use the tab, so you don't have to guess what command exactly, especially when you start working with multiple tools. One place it's called create, another place it'll be called init, so the autocomplete comes in really handy anyway. So once again, delete me. So in this case, when we list this config, there's absolutely nothing. Basically, it's completely empty, and we're gonna have to start from the very beginning. Okay, so we have the profile created. Okay, and we should be able to get the list of projects and set it for us, and the command is gcloud projects list. Okay, so now it's telling us you can use gcloud auth login, or you can use this, and this is the part where this way of setting the profile comes in handy. But we haven't really talked about the service accounts, so I will cover this part in the service account section. But the regular part that you can use here is gcloud auth login, and it will basically do the exact same thing that it will do in the normal way. Okay, and now it's telling us you can find the project list and set project. Well, let me show you guys first that it's not set. Okay, so gcloud projects list. Okay, and it helps. Set project. And we go back. That's the way we want it. And we would talk about the service accounts in the IAM section. Gets a little advanced, so don't worry about it for now. Thank you guys, and that should be the end of everything gcloud SDK. Well, in the order that I'm going. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, so last lecture in this section, and basically this is not really that important from the exam point of view, but like in real life you're going to have to do this. Basically your installations are not going to work out well, and then you're going to have to reinstall stuff, and that's why working on virtual machines is way better than working on your own machine. Anyway, so this is the version we have, and this procedure is pretty straightforward. Once again, look it up on the Google website for uninstalling, and it gives you two paths. So just copy paste and it will give you the install location. The first one is the install location, and the second one is where the config files are stored. Right, so both places we're just going to do rm minus rf, and then after that, if you guys remember the completion part that it added to .zshrc, we're gonna have to remove that also, but it needs to happen manually. So yeah, these are the two paths which you would find in your .zshrc, or if you're using Linux, then it'll be .bashrc. But just those two commands, get rid of them, and basically you're done. So guys, practice as much as you can. This and the IAM shows quite a bit in the exam, and that's why I covered it in so much detail. So practice as much as you can, and I will see you in the next session, and we'll start doing some real stuff. Thanks, guys.